Fat girl was fed to wild dogs as entertainment. Mountain man fought the pack bare-handed and roared, "She's mine to protect." The torches burned bright against the autumn night, their flames throwing monstrous shadows across the courtyard of Raven's Hollow Manor. The scent of wine, smoke, and wet leaves clung to the air. Laughter, high, cruel, drunken, rolled across the assembled crowd of aristocrats wrapped in velvet and fur. At the center of the spectacle crouched Prudence Prue Fairchild. Her wrists raw where the iron cuffs bit into them, her body squeezed inside a cage barely large enough to kneel. At 24 and over 400 pounds, she had long grown used to ridicule. But nothing had prepared her for this. Lady Vivian Ashworth raised her jeweled goblet, her voice sharp enough to slice the night. Tonight, a performance most fitting. Our servant thought herself righteous, daring to accuse us, daring to meddle with our affairs. Now, let her serve as amusement. The crowd jeered, clinking glasses. Prue shook her head, tears streaking her dirt-smeared cheeks. "Please," she sobbed, "I swear I will be silent. I will never speak of the children again." "Too late?" Lady Vivian sneered. She signaled with a flick of her wrist. Iron gates screeched open. Out poured mastiffs the size of ponies, muscles rippling under glossy coats, jaws dripping with froth. They had been starved for this moment, trained for blood. The guests leaned forward in eager silence. A beast growled low and hungry and advanced toward the cage. Prue pressed herself against the bars, terror flooding her veins. She prayed, though her voice was little more than a whisper. Then it came, a roar that silenced both hounds and men. Not human, not animal, but something in between, thundering from the tree line beyond the walls. "She is mine to protect." The courtyard stank of anticipation. Men in tailored coats leaned forward with smirks. Jeweled women covered their mouths with lace fans, pretending shock but savoring every second. For them, Prudence Fairchild's terror was not tragedy, it was theater. Prue had once served these people faithfully. She had scrubbed their marble floors, polished their silver, and carried trays laden with food she herself was never allowed to taste. She had been invisible until the day she uncovered their darkest sin, the trade of children stolen from nearby orphanages, sold to faceless men in black coaches under cover of night. She had tried to stop it. She had begged the local constable to listen. Instead, Lady Vivian discovered her betrayal, and for that, Prue now knelt in chains, offered up as sport. The mastiffs circled, hackles bristling, their growls vibrating through the earth. Prue's heart pounded. Her weight had always marked her as different, mocked by children, whispered about by strangers. Now it had condemned her entirely, branded her as nothing more than a fat sow, fit for slaughter. Lady Vivian's jeweled lips curled. "See how she trembles, a pig dressed as a woman. Watch closely, my friends. This is what becomes of servants who overstep." The cage door creaked open. A servant shoved Prue into the dirt arena. She stumbled forward, her legs trembling beneath her. The guests laughed as if she were some grotesque jester. One mastiff lunged, teeth snapping inches from her arm. Prue shrieked and fell back, covering her face. She thought of the orphans she had tried to save. She thought of her own short life, ending here in blood and mud. "God," she whispered, "please don't let me die like this." The dogs drew nearer, their breath hot, their eyes merciless. The crowd rose from their seats, the cruel thrill of violence igniting their cheers. And then everything changed. From beyond the iron fence a shadow moved. Not the shadow of man, not of beast, but something colossal. With a single bound, it cleared the 3-meter barrier and landed between Prue and the snarling mastiffs. The ground shook. The dogs skidded back in confusion. The figure straightened. Moonlight revealed a giant of a man, taller than any 2 men stacked, shoulders broad as the gate he had leapt, his hair black and wild, scars crisscrossing his bare forearms like the map of a savage history. His chest rose and fell with primal force. Titan wolfsbane. Rumors whispered of him in taverns, that he lived in the forest like a beast, that animals obeyed his call, that he was neither holy man nor holy monster. Now he stood in the flesh, and his roar thundered across the manor. "She is mine to protect." The mastiffs hesitated, sensing something older and wilder than their training. The crowd fell silent, goblets frozen halfway to lips. Prue, sprawled in the dirt, looked up into the face of her savior. His eyes, dark as the forest, met hers, not with pity, not with disgust, but with a startling, unshakable certainty. For the first time in her life, someone had stepped between her and the world's cruelty. The courtyard erupted. Shouts, the crack of rifles hastily loaded, Lady Vivian's shrill command cutting through the night. "Kill him! Kill them both!" But Titan Wolfsbane moved before any man could raise a weapon. With one arm, he seized the iron bar of the cage that had held Prue and wrenched it from its hinges as though it were made of straw. The mastiffs surged again, but Titan's roar drove them back, tails low, ears flattened. Even beasts bred for cruelty knew when they faced something greater. He stooped, lifted Prue as if she weighed nothing, and cradled her against his chest. She gasped, half from fear, half from shock, at being carried so effortlessly. The laughter of the aristocrats, the snapping jaws of the mastiffs, the screech of Lady Vivian, all blurred behind her as Titan vaulted the wall once more. The night swallowed them. Branches whipped past as he ran, his strides eating the ground like thunder. Prue clung to him, her tears freezing against his shoulder. She expected at any moment to feel the bite of a bullet, the sting of a dog's teeth, but none came. Titan moved too swiftly, too surely, as if the forest itself bent to his path. At last, when her sobs had slowed to ragged breaths, she found her voice. "Why? Why would you risk your life for me?" He didn't look down, eyes fixed on the dark trail ahead. "Because no life should be thrown to dogs. Not yours, not anyone's." Prue closed her eyes, the words sinking deeper than any comfort she had known. All her life she had been told she was too much, too big, too slow, too unworthy. Yet this man, this giant, spoke as though she were sacred. Hours passed. The forest grew denser, the air colder. Titan slowed only when they reached a rushing creek, moonlight glinting off the water. He set her gently on a moss-covered rock. "Rest. We are safe here for now." Prue winced as she tried to move. Her ankles were swollen, her wrists bruised from the shackles. Titan knelt before her, his massive hand surprisingly tender as he examined her injuries. "They hurt you," he muttered, his voice like distant thunder. "They always did," she whispered before she could stop herself. His gaze flicked up, sharp. "Who?" Prue shook her head, ashamed. "Everyone, since I was a child. My size. It made me a target. Tonight was only the end of what began long ago." For a long moment he said nothing. Then he tore a strip from his own cloak, dipped it in the icy creek, and wrapped it carefully around her wrists. "The world is cruel," he said, "but cruelty is not truth. They called me monster once, but the forest taught me different. What they name as weakness is often strength they cannot comprehend. The fire of his words warmed her more than the cloak he draped over her shoulders. She wanted to believe him, wanted desperately to cling to this fragile flicker of worth. When he rose, towering above her, she almost wept with the sudden fear he might leave, but instead he extended his hand. "Come, we must go deeper. Raven's Hollow will not give up so easily." Prue hesitated, staring at his hand, so large it could have crushed hers. Slowly, trembling, she placed her palm against it. His grip closed, steady, unshakable. Together they crossed the creek, the water numbing her legs, his strength guiding her every step. Beyond, the forest thickened, shadows folding around them like a shield. By the time the first light of dawn streaked the horizon, Prue no longer felt like prey fleeing a hunt. She felt, for the first time, as though she were walking toward something, not safety perhaps, not yet, but a chance. And beside Titan Wolfsbane, she wondered if that chance might be everything. Titan led her through tangled woods until the sun climbed high, scattering gold through the canopy. At last they emerged into a clearing where a cabin stood, built of stone and timber, so massive it seemed part of the earth itself. Smoke curled gently from the chimney, carrying the scent of pine resin and roasted meat. "This is home," Titan said simply. Prue's breath caught. She had never seen anything like it. The cabin was not a shack for survival. It was a fortress, carefully crafted with patience and love. Thick beams framed the porch, pelts softened the doorway, and wooden carvings of wolves, bears, and eagles lined the posts. Inside, warmth enveloped her like a blanket. A great hearth blazed with orange light. Above it, herbs and dried fish hung from hooks. A sturdy table sat near the fire, hand-carved and polished, smooth by years of use. Shelves filled with jars of roots and salves lined the walls. There was no luxury here, but there was dignity. Prue sank onto a chair, exhausted. Titan moved with silent assurance, setting a kettle on the fire, slicing bread, and ladling stew into a bowl. He placed it before her. "Eat." She hesitated, shame rising. Too many times she had been mocked for the way she ate, for the size of her body. But Titan only waited, expression steady. Tentatively, she lifted the spoon. The stew was rich and hearty, filled with venison, carrots, and wild herbs. The warmth spread through her chest, thawing the fear that had frozen there. When she set the bowl down, Titan refilled it without a word. "You will not go hungry here?" Her eyes stung. "Why are you so kind to me?" He paused, leaning his great frame against the hearth. "Because kindness is not something to be earned. It is something owed to every living being. I learned that from the creatures of this forest. Wolves care for their wounded. Eagles guard their young. Should men do less?" That night, Titan gave her his bed, an enormous pallet layered with furs. He spread a blanket near the hearth for himself. When she protested, he only said, "You need the rest more than I do." His tone left no room for argument. Days turned into weeks. Prue began to find her place within the sanctuary. At first, she moved cautiously, afraid of breaking things, afraid of taking up too much space. But Titan never treated her presence as a burden. He taught her to grind herbs into salves, to mend leather, to fetch water from the stream. When she burned bread one morning, mortified, he chuckled and ate it anyway, declaring, "Char makes the strong stronger." Small gestures marked their days. Titan always let her eat first. He carved a stool perfectly sized for her comfort. When she struggled to split wood, he placed his huge hands over hers on the axe handle, guiding her swing until the log split cleanly. Her laughter startled even herself the first time it bubbled out. One evening, a storm lashed the mountains. Rain hammered the roof. Wind howled like the voices of ghosts. Prue huddled near the fire, memories of Raven's Hollow gnawing at her. Titan noticed her trembling. Without speaking, he draped a bear pelt around her shoulders and sat beside her, his bulk a wall against the storm. "You are safe here," he murmured. "No hounds, no cages, only the fire and me." She turned to him, voice breaking. "I've never been safe, not once in my life." His eyes met hers, dark and steady. "You are now." That night, for the first time, Prue slept without fear. As days stretched onward, the shame she had carried for years began to loosen its grip. Titan never once called her names, never sneered at her size. When she tripped over a basket, he steadied her without a hint of mockery. When she grew tired, he adjusted the day's work without reproach. In his presence, she began to believe that perhaps her body was not a curse, but simply part of who she was. She started to smile more often, to hum while grinding herbs, to sit by the fire with a book Titan had traded for in a distant town. And Titan, though quiet, seemed to change too. His laughter grew less rare. His eyes lingered longer on her when she wasn't looking. Once, when she thanked him for carving her a comb, his hand brushed hers, and he drew back almost shyly. Prue lay awake that night, heart racing, realizing that in the shadow of the mountains, something fragile yet powerful was blooming. She was no longer the girl thrown to dogs for sport. She was a woman learning her own worth, and beside her was a man who seemed determined to protect it. The forest had become Prue's sanctuary. Each day brought small victories. She could split wood on her own now, knead dough without fear of scorn, and walk the paths Titan showed her without stumbling. Yet peace, she would learn, was fragile. One morning, Titan returned from checking his snares with a look that chilled her. "Tracks," he said shortly. "Men, too many." Fear clawed her stomach. "They found us?" "Not yet," he answered, but his tone held little comfort. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Titan seemed distant, his eyes fixed on flames that licked the chimney. Finally, Prue touched his arm. "What is it?" He hesitated. For a man who spoke little, words seemed heavier than stone. "I have kept things from you." Her throat tightened. "About me?" He shook his head. "About myself?" His gaze did not waver from the fire. "Years ago, before I found this forest, men hunted me. They called me a beast. Some came with chains, others with rifles. I fought them. I survived. But not all walked away." The flicker of flames etched the scars across his face, each line a silent testimony. "I thought," Titan continued, voice rough, "if I lived apart, I could do no more harm. But the world does not forget. Men like those at Raven's Hollow, they see me as monster, and monsters must be destroyed." Prue swallowed. "You are not a monster. You saved me. You saved the animals. You built a home with your own hands." His eyes flicked to hers, the barest hint of hope breaking through the storm. "Do you believe that?" "With all my heart." For the first time, Titan looked away from the fire and truly at her. In his gaze, she saw not the giant who had fought mastiffs with bare hands, but a man carrying a burden too heavy for anyone's soul. Days later, news reached even their wilderness. A trapper brought word. Lady Vivian Ashworth had survived the humiliation of that night and was furious. She whispered to sheriffs and bribed bounty hunters. Stories spread through nearby towns. A giant had abducted a servant girl, keeping her as his captive bride. Prue's stomach turned as the trapper relayed the lies. They say she's paying gold for proof, dead or alive. When the man left, Prue turned to Titan. "They're coming for you, for us." "I know." His tone was steady, but his jaw was hard as stone. "And they will not stop." That night, sleep eluded her. She thought of Lady Vivian's cold smile, the dog's snarling jaws, the laughter of the crowd. If Vivian succeeded, Titan would be killed, branded the monster they claimed him to be. And she, Prue shuddered, she would be dragged back, silenced forever. At dawn, she found Titan outside, sharpening his axe. His great shoulders gleamed with sweat despite the morning chill. "You mean to fight them," she said quietly. His eyes met hers, unflinching. "I will not let them take you." Her heart twisted at the simple truth of his words. All her life she had been disposable, less than nothing. Now, someone was ready to fight the world for her. But fear gnawed at her courage. What if they kill you? Titan set down the axe and stepped closer, his presence filling the clearing. "Then I die knowing I protected what matters most." His hand rose rough and careful, brushing her cheek. "You." Tears welled hot in her eyes. For the first time, she realized she was not afraid of the hunters or even of Vivian. She was afraid of losing him. She pressed her hand against his chest, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. "Then I'll fight with you. I won't hide while you stand alone." For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the whisper of the wind through pines. Then Titan nodded once. "So be it. We face them together." And in that vow, spoken in the hush of dawn, the lines between protector and protected dissolved. They were no longer giant and servant girl. They were something stronger. Two souls, scarred yet unbroken, standing against the cruelty of the world. They came at dusk. Horns blared through the forest, dogs bayed, and men's voices echoed like thunder among the trees. The hunters had arrived, 50 strong, rifles gleaming, their boots trampling the undergrowth. At their head rode Lady Vivian herself, cloaked in crimson, eyes alight with malice. "Bring me the giant," she shrieked, "and the fat girl, too, dead if you must." Prue's blood turned cold, but Titan's hand squeezed hers, steady as granite. "Stay close. Trust me." The forest seemed to awaken at his call. Wolves slunk from the shadows, a bear rose from the stream, eagles wheeled above with piercing cries. It was not Titan alone who stood against the hunters, but the wild itself. The first hounds burst into the clearing, teeth bared. Titan roared and charged. With one sweep of his arm, he sent two sprawling. Another lunged for Prue, but she remembered his lessons. She swung a torch she carried, fire crackling, and the beast yelped and fled. Gunfire cracked. Bullets ripped bark from trees. Titan moved like a storm, seizing a fallen log to shield Prue, then hurling it into a cluster of hunters. Wolves darted in and out, slashing at ankles. The bear's roar drowned out even the rifles. Lady Vivian shrieked from horseback, her face twisted with fury. "Kill him! He's nothing but a beast!" Titan turned, chest heaving, eyes burning. "No," he thundered, voice carrying over the chaos. "A beast preys on the weak. I protect them." Vivian raised her pistol, aiming straight at Prue. Time slowed. Prue froze, terror clawing her throat. But Titan was faster. He leapt between them, the shot echoing. Pain ripped across his shoulder, blood staining his cloak. Still, he stood unbowed. "You'll not touch her," he growled. Rage boiled in Prue. The woman who had caged her, mocked her, fed her to dogs, now threatened the man who had given her life. With a cry she didn't know she had in her, Prue lunged forward. She seized a branch, swung it with all her strength, and struck Vivian's pistol hand. The weapon flew into the dirt. Vivian reeled, stunned. "You wretched cow—" "Not cow," Prue cut in, her voice shaking but fierce. "Woman, and no cage, no dog, no monster will silence me again." The hunters faltered, seeing their mistress disarmed, their giant prey unbroken. Animals pressed closer, snarling, surrounding them. Fear rippled through the men. One by one, they lowered their rifles. Vivian's scream split the night as her power crumbled. "Cowards! He's just one man!" But it was clear to all. Titan was not one man. He was the mountain itself. And beside him stood the woman he called his own. The hunters fled, leaving their mistress screaming into the dark. Titan slumped, blood dripping from his wound. Prue caught him, holding his massive frame with every ounce of her strength. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispered fiercely. Through the haze of pain, he smiled. "Never. You are mine to protect, always." And as the forest grew silent once more, Prue realized that together they had not just survived, they had won. The cabin glowed warm against the dark, its stone walls sheltering them from the forest winds. Titan's wound had been bound, his giant frame stretched on the bed of furs. Prue sat beside him, her hand resting over his, refusing to let go. Silence reigned, but for the crackle of the hearth. Outside, wolves howled, not in menace, but in kinship. The forest had claimed them both. "You should rest," she whispered, smoothing the hair from his brow. His eyes opened, steady and unyielding, even through the pain. "Not while you watch over me. You've given me more strength than any wound could steal." Prue's throat tightened. "I thought I was nothing. A servant, a burden, food for hounds." Titan squeezed her hand, his voice like the deep rumble of the earth. "To me, you are everything. Without you, I was a shadow wandering the trees. With you, I am a man." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but for the first time, they weren't from despair. She bent and pressed her forehead to his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. "You've given me a home, you've given me hope, but—" She drew a shaky breath. "What if the world doesn't stop? What if they come again?" Titan's arm wrapped around her, pulling her close. "Then we face them together. The world may never accept us, Prue. But here, in this cabin, in this forest, you are safe, you are loved, and that is enough." The fire crackled louder, throwing sparks toward the rafters. Prue closed her eyes, clutching the warmth of his words. Yet, in the silence, one question lingered like smoke in the air. Would love be enough to hold back the world beyond the forest? Every story we tell reminds us that strength isn't always measured in muscle, and beauty isn't always seen with the eyes. Prue was thrown to the dogs as a cruel joke, yet she rose as a queen in the heart of the forest because someone finally saw her worth. And that's the truth of love. It finds us where the world tries to break us. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? I read every comment, and your words remind me why these tales matter. If you still believe in love, don't leave. The next story waits for you.